Hey all you addicts out there, welcome back to another addicted fishing tutorial. Today we're talking about some trout fishing. We're out here on the lake and we're going to talk about a really neat tactic and a good way to catch these big trout out here, and it's with a bobber and a fly. So if you guys want to learn more about how to catch fish, and specifically with bobbers and flies, stay tuned, it's coming at you right now. Alright, so the bobber and fly can be used really any time of year to catch these fish. But in the springtime and when these trout are really on the feed and there's hatches of bugs coming out, it's a really effective way of fishing because one, you can match the hatch and you can use those light, delicate flies with the bobber. And two, it's easy to cast and you can get it ways out there if you haven't yet graduated up into fly fishing and you want to use those techniques and tactics, because honestly a lot of times the fly fishing will sometimes work better than any kind of spin fishing or bait fishing will in a lake. So being able to use that fly fishing technique without the fly fishing rod is a really good way to be versatile and catch more fish. So first and foremost, what we have here is a 2 to 6 pound Okuma Solilo ultralight rod. This has a 3000 series reel and a 20-pound test on it. I like the ultralight because it makes it a lot of fun to fight those small fish, and it's even more exhilarating to fight a really big trout. So I go with that 20-pound test so that it casts really nice. You can go anywhere from a 10 to 15 to 20. You don't want to go any heavier than that or else it binds up too much off of that reel when you go to cast these light presentations. So I run that 20-pound test all the way through my guides down to my bobber itself, my indicator. And this is just a normal yellow indicator. They come clear, they come green. There's a few different colors. I think actually this one is green. But there's a few different colors that these come in. You can use the clear ones if these fish are spooky. If you're fishing lakes that have a lot of pressure and you don't want to be spooking those fish as you're moving this along, you can go with that clear bobber. But the yellow ones or the chartreuse ones I like a lot because they're really visible out there on the lake. From that, a little key point on those floats, you always want to put that tapered end towards your main line, towards your braid. So I'm going to have that braid towards that tapered end so that when I do pull on this, as I give that fly a presentation out in the lake, it doesn't disturb as much water as if I pull this round end. So I'm going to be pulling this small end, walking it through the water and allowing that fly to fall behind about 6 feet from my fluorocarbon leader and not spook those fish while they're looking at that fly. So like I just said, about 6 foot fluorocarbon leader. I'm using 10 pound here. You can go with a lot lighter line if you need to, if the fish are spooky, but today we're fishing this lake, we're fishing for some big fish, and I'm gonna want a little bit heavier pound test in a 10 pound fluorocarbon. That fluorocarbon is great because it's nice and clear. And then we'll get to the business end, and it is the fly. The flies really vary. You see here that I have a few different kinds. Some look very natural, some not so much. There's different presentations you can give these fish, whether they're looking for more of a lure presentation with a really different colored fly, or if you want something that's very natural, or you can even use dry flies. Go into your local fly shop, talk to them about what's eating best on the lakes, what the trout are on, and what time of the year it is for when you should be using certain kinds of insects. But today we're gonna go with a little bit of both. I'm gonna use a woolly bugger style, and then I'm gonna use these nymph style, these stone flies, as well as these leech patterns, which are made out of like a rabbit fur. So these are more of a chicken feather, these are rabbit fur, and these are just a real natural stone fly presentation. And all of them work given the certain circumstance. So to start today, I'm gonna go with something super simple. I'm just gonna use this black and chartreuse fly. Tie it onto the end of that 6 foot leader. You don't want to go too short of a leader because you want this to sink down and you want it to be able to get down into that strike zone where those fish are at. Sometimes they'll be feeding up towards the surface and that'll tell you you want to be up further in the water column, but today they seem to be down a little bit deeper, and we're going to use about a 6 foot leader so that it can sink down behind the float and get down in front of those fish. Just a normal fisherman's knot on there. Trim your tag ends and we're ready to fish. All right, so now we're on the edge of the lake, and probably the most crucial part of fishing this presentation is how you cast it. A lot of the time, again, you're gonna have a 4 to 5 foot long fluorocarbon leader, so that light line with that heavier fly tends to wrap up a lot. So when you do cast, you wanna get a good high rod tip, keep it out above the grass and above the ground behind you, make sure everything's straightened out, and do a really slow to fast cast. You don't wanna whip it or make it too violent as it goes out there because it'll cause a boomerang effect of that fly and that float, and it'll actually cause you to tangle up every time. And then if so facto, it'll break off your fly when you do finally hook up. So What I like to do is when I walk up to the lake, I make sure I have a good casting platform, a good place where I'm not gonna get hung up, and then I start to break down the hole mathematically. I can see I have an island here, I have a nice deep part of the lake, and I have a bunch of moss and different structure over here. So I'm gonna start, again, mathematically, counterclockwise, clockwise, I'm gonna go from left to right, making about a 15 to a 20-foot distance cast in between each of those casts as I go so that I can cover the most part of the lake. A lot of these times these fish will be hunting and cruising around looking for these baits and looking for these natural presentations in the lake. So a lot of times they'll just come to you. So you'll keep that pattern, figure out where the deepest part is, and really you want to cast as far as you can so you can have the longest presentation. Okay, so now that it's out in the lake, the key is to let that fly fall. You're gonna let it fall for anywhere so 3 to 5 seconds depending on your depth. And all you're gonna do is a nice slow reel. And really just imagine like you're doing a fly fishing presentation where you're stripping in line. You wanna give the most natural presentation possible, and that is that swimming larva or that insect that those fish are seeing where it swims and pulses. So what I like to do is kind of give it a nice little rod tip, 1, 2, 3, and then let it fall. Give that a 2 or a 3 count, and then 1, 2, 3, just light little jerks as I'm bringing that back in, letting that fly fall back down. 1, 2, 3. And you can really use any rhythm you want. A lot of times I'll watch the insects and the bugs along the bank and in the lake itself to see how they're acting and what they're doing and what a natural presentation would actually look like. Oh, there he is. The real benefit to using this presentation too is in adverse weather conditions. If there's a real heavy wind or or some kind of weather condition that it's gonna make it really hard to fish that lake, these presentations work awesome because you can actually fish them with the wind. If I wanted to, if I was using like a dry fly or some kind of small nymph, I could throw this out there and I could let it drift with the wind all the way across the lake naturally like that actual insect would. So it's a great thing to use. Oh, there's something. It's a great, oh wow, what is this? What's going on here? That is the hardest fighting bluegill in the country here. Oh, there he goes. So obviously it works for multiple species, so. But it's a great way to fish. One, if you don't want to start fly fishing, if it's something that you don't have time for or you haven't learned yet. And two, it's great for adverse weather conditions when the bite is on the fly. A lot of times when really heavy winds and stuff like that, it's gonna be hard to sit out here and cast your fly rod. So going to this float setup with these flies and these woolly buggers works excellent. Oh, there he is. Oh man, that was a huge one too. So that one I actually let it sink just a little bit longer. I let it sit out there for about a good 5, 6 count. Went to start reeling and I think the fish already had it on the drop. What you'll notice a lot of times too is they'll either hit it while it's sitting still or on the fall as that fly starts to sink. It's really vulnerable at that point in time, and that's when that fish is gonna swim up and grab it. You're gonna get their attention by that 1, 2, 3 pulse, and then on that fall is when you're usually gonna see those fish bite. I'm gonna get it back out there again. All right, so now that we worked that one section of the bank, I worked it from left all the way to the right, clockwise. Didn't hook anything other than that one. Fished it for about another 10 minutes. Now I'm moved down the bank about 50 yards, and I'm gonna cover the deeper end of the lake here. And I'm just gonna periodically move my way around the lake and cover it completely as I start to try to cover each little spot on this lake, the shallow end, the freshwater inlet, and then the deep end itself. There he is. Oh God, that's a big one. That's a big one. Oh boy, he's hot. He's hot. Live action. Live action. Little. So you saw it, again, it was on the fall. I gave that a little presentation, I gave it a little movement, I started to let it fall, and as soon as I let it fall, that bobber shot under, and there that fish was. Whoa, he's got me all wrapped up in the weeds. Uh-oh. He's wrapped up in the weeds, everybody. Come on. See, this is why we use that braided line. Anytime, any other time we're using like a 4-pound or an 8-pound test like you normally would, it's gonna always get broke off on that stuff when it starts to get abrased on any rocks or any moss. That braided line cut right through that moss and allowed me to get that thing off of there. Crap, that's a big fish. Oh, there he goes. Well, we all got to see him. So there you have it, guys. That's how you effectively use these these floats and these woolly bugger setups. Again, any kind of fly is gonna work for this adaptation, whether or not, oh, that one actually straightened out the hook on me. That was a big trout, but at least you guys got to see it. But any fly is gonna work. You can use dry flies, you can use wet flies, you can use small nymphs, you can use these lure type woolly bugger flies to catch these trout, but anything works given the time of year. So go to your local fly shop, ask them what's hatching, ask them what's working good on the lakes and what people are using. Get yourself some of these little bobbers and go out and catch more fish. If you guys like what you saw here today and you want to see more, go down here, hit that little bell notification, and subscribe to this channel, Addicted Fishing. We aim to educate, entertain, and inspire anglers like you to go out and catch more fish and have more fun doing it. Thanks so much for tuning in today, you guys. You stay fishy, and we'll see you out there.